Hello everyone, the Instant Camera Guy here. Just a reminder that at the moment I am smack bang in the middle of the Christmas rush. I have a ton of cameras to get through, partly due to a backlog because, as you guys know, I recently had to move house, move workshop, renovate said house, build a brand new workshop before I could actually start to work. And that means I am still catching up on orders, so at the moment turnaround time is longer than usual. As I've said before, usually it only takes me a week or so to finish with a client's camera. At the moment I am a month or so behind. But this camera is very interesting. This is one that I actually refurbished back in August and sent off to a client, and the client messaged me saying that it had stopped working. And they said that what was happening is the mirror seemed to be getting stuck, so it wasn't basically going all the way up, and nothing was coming out. So I thought this video would be interesting because it's going to show off a warranty repair. The entire time I've had this channel running, I've only actually had to do one other warranty repair, which is a pretty decent track record. But it shows off a few new things that are going on in terms of how I refurbish cameras, but it also shows off just really how difficult it can be to describe problems either over the phone or over the internet, because the problem that Ronnie described was completely different to what it actually is. So basically the issue that I assumed that I was going to be dealing with is, I've shown you guys in videos before, but basically the mirror assembly that flips up and down has a little rubber tongue. And that rubber tongue, actually let's see, I think I have a Fresnel screen down here that I could show you. Yeah, here we go. This is a dodgy Fresnel from a SX-70 Model 3. Basically, there's this little rubber tongue. And the rubber tongue, in this particular case that you guys can see here, is cut incorrectly. So it is actually a square shape. Now, what can happen is these rubber tongues, either they're not pressed in properly at the factory, or heat dissolves some of the glue and it starts to shift forwards. But basically, that square-shaped rubber tongue starts to get caught on two little plastic lugs, and it basically introduces a lag. So basically you go to take the photo, the mirror tries to raise, but because the rubber is stuck on those lugs, there's a lag, and then it works. Now this is something that I always preemptively service whenever I do Model 1 SX-70 cameras. I always cut those bits down to size, because otherwise you're just inviting a problem to occur in the future. And I started to think, well, maybe I just made a mistake, and maybe I just simply, on this particular client's camera, I was in a rush in Christmas time, you know, yada, yada, yada. Maybe I just missed cutting the tongue. Anyway, I said, look, ship it over express. I'll work on it as soon as I can as a priority. And when I got it, this is what I discovered. Can you guys hear that? So that has absolutely nothing to do with the tongue. The motor in it has just completely fried itself. Now, I always recondition motors, and I always send cameras back with test photos, but do you know what? Sometimes there is just no saving 1970s technology. And that means that this will be a fairly trivial fix. I'm simply just going to replace the motor with a brand new one, and that will bring this thing back to life. So I have one of my brand new Mabuchi motors, and I will be installing that into the camera. Now, generally, I like to try and keep things as original as possible when I refurbish these things. So I like to try and save the original motors where it's possible. But in this case, yeah, obviously, even though that motor left my workshop in functional condition, it didn't stay functional for very long. So I'm just going to find where I put my knife that I'm going to use for de-skinning. And once I've got my knife, I will make a start. Alright, one knife, one heat gun. Now, it should be fairly trivial to get this skin off. This is actually skin that I salvaged from the client's original. I basically use my own double-sided adhesive to re-stick the skins back on, and it's usually pretty easy to remove again. So let's see how well my work held up. Yeah, I must say I was pretty glad to realize that it wasn't a mistake that I had made. it was just simply that this motor was beyond salvaging. All right. Now, I'm going to say here at this point that Ronnie just must be particularly unlucky because it worked fine for me. Like I said, when I send back clients' cameras, I actually film test every single one with multiple photos. And at no stage did Ronnie's camera even hint that it was struggling in terms of the motor. So, luck of the draw, I guess. All right. Yeah, honestly, the hardest part about doing this repair is going to be the skin, because I have to redo it. And partly that means getting my new adhesive off of the old leather, which is actually pretty trivial. Like it generally peels off quite easy. Like so, you just gotta basically just use your thumbs. But yeah, this is, I used to glue the leather down, but I've since moved to double-sided adhesive sheets because it's a lot easier and neater, and it's much easier if I need to get inside the camera again at some stage. I found the adhesive that I was using was actually a little too strong and permanent, and it made things difficult to re-repair. If I needed to get inside, because every now and again, before I, when I go to test a client's camera, I'll realize that I've missed something, and I need to open it up and correct something before it goes out. So, although that doesn't happen very often, it's annoying when it does, so I like to try and just make things as easy as possible. Now, the bottom of this camera, I'll take the adhesive off using some shellac, and I'll do that outside. But I would just get this thing working first. Which shouldn't be too bad, but yeah, I'm going to use shellac just to basically remove all the other adhesive off of this. But in the time being, I will just take the screws out. This one's a little bit trapped. But yeah, so that makes the year of 2024. I've had 3 repairs to do. Actually, 4. I've had 4 cameras returned in total. One of which I genuinely just could not find a fault on. I think that the client was experiencing some bad film, or simply user error. One camera was destroyed by the Canadian postal system, but it ended up being okay anyway, because at the time my client had received it, I had just invented the Polar Vault, and my client was interested in it anyway, so I was like, well, look, send your camera back. He had a Sonar autofocus. I said, look, just send it back and I'll upgrade it and fix the other thing for free, even though it was the postal service that did the damage. So they did. I had the other camera from a Singaporean client where the double-sided tape I'd used had gotten wet and formed a bridge between 2 circuits on a switch. And then I have this one, which through no fault of my own has spontaneously... See, look, here's the little X indicating that I refurbished the motor on this one. But yeah, clearly my refurbishment, it just was not meant to last, and this motor was well and truly on its way out. Now, another possibility could exist here, and that maybe it's not the motor, but maybe it's the driver chip. Sometimes they can spontaneously blow. I I hope that's not the case, because this will turn into a different video. The motor driver chip is harder to replace than the motor. It's a lot more fiddly, but it's not super difficult, and I do have spares. Here's a spare motor with a driver chip that I took from a completely dead SX-70. Alright, so my soldering iron is hot, and basically what I'm going to do is just desolder this motor straight off. Now, motor failure like this, like what you guys just saw, is the most common on SX-70 Model 1s. I don't know why. I think it's just like the specification or the materials that these motors were made out of. They just weren't super great. I've spoken about it in my motor video, but Alphas generally had much more reliable motors. And then obviously, like, any camera that had like a Mabuchi motor was even more reliable than that. So I will just be adding a new motor that's brand new, and thus bypassing any potential for issue. Now I'm just using a bit of solder wick here just to remove all the solder from the legs. There we go. And now we can prepare this motor. So the way that I like to wire these in, I like to just bend and straighten up the positive leg. The negative, I'm going to add a little wire to. So I've just got this green wire. Color doesn't matter, of course. We will just tin the end there. Snip that back, hold the motor in there. Just like so. Blob a bit of solder on there to keep the wire in place. Now, companies such as Mint and Retrospect, they actually make up little, basically like little ribbon PCBs that do the job of this wire for me. Well, for them, I should say. I can't be bothered doing that. Like, it seriously would not be that hard to have made. But then I've got to wait for ribbon cables, and wire can quite literally be free. Like, you can pick up cables on the side of the road. There is so much e-waste out there. So I like to just recycle rather than have something new made up. Alright, now we've got to make the second leg here. I always like to make this wire just a little bit longer. Just like so. Cool. And now we have our negative leg. So I solder in the negative leg in first. So the negative leg faces the shutter. It's also very important to get this motor in the correct way. If you wire up things back to front, the motor will run in reverse. And trust me, you do not want that. That will destroy everything. It will absolutely ruin your day if you let that happen. Alright, so negative is on. Next thing, I'm just going to push through the positive. Alright, so that's all behaving. I'm just going to hold this motor up here for a second with a bit of blue tack, just while I really make sure that positive leg is connected, because it was a little bit loose. Great, now I can remove that, and then I'm going to use some very thin Kapton tape to basically just make sure that these two little legs can't touch. So Apologies for the noise, by the way. I have some construction going on across the road, so there's some trucks going past at odd hours, and it's pretty hot today, so I've just opened the windows basically so that I get a nice breeze coming into the room so that I don't suffocate. Alright, so now I'm just going to recycle the original rubber bushes that were on the original motor. One of them I do need to add a little adapter, so I think that's some 6mm PVC tube that I'm just pushing over the motor first, and then we can recycle the original bushing. And then the last thing I have to do is find, the drive shaft here, so I've got to reuse that. And what I'm actually going to do first is the new axle on the motor is actually thinner than the original. And so that means I actually have to take the end that connects to the motor and crimp it. Now again, mint in retrospect, they actually have new drive shaft made up by a company, but crimping the original works just as well. In fact, I have seen the modern reproduction drive shafts fail. So I know for a fact that my method works. All right. And again, it's more sustainable. Why do we need a new spring made up when the original one works just as well and takes basically zero effort to modify? All right. Now, I can see my camera's running out of battery. I didn't intend on recording this video, so hopefully it's got enough juice to last until the end. Alright. Okay. Cool, now I just got to make sure the drive shaft becomes attached, so I'm just looking for... clear my workbench. I'm looking for this, my little bendy screwdriver. I find this is the easiest tool to use in terms of getting it back on and in place. There we go. And yeah, I'm just going to push that all the way home to the motor. Now this thing should work. This should have fixed all the issues. I might need to open close the film door a few times. Yep. And yeah, there you go. Now I will be doing a follow-up video in the next few weeks about the motors, because I've actually found another motor that is compatible with SX-70s. See, in the original press literature, the Eames video, it describes the SX-70 motor as being 14,000 RPM. Now this motor that I've just put in the camera runs at 14,000 RPM at about 6 volts, which should be the perfect specifications on paper. In reality, and I haven't tested it, but I would say that that's not 1400 RPM. I don't believe that's the original RPM that the original SX-70 had. It sounds slower and the ejection is a little bit slower. Now, this is not a problem because the camera functions exactly the same. The mirror return is all spring-loaded, so it goes up at the same rate. The only difference is the film ejects a little bit slower. That might be a good thing because this plastic gear train is quite brittle. And if you move something too fast with too much power, you are at more risk of shedding one of the cogs. So by putting in the very slightly slower motor, it actually may be doing a lot in terms of the longevity of this camera. But yeah, that new one works totally fine. I'm now going to go and box this thing up and let my client know that their camera has been repaired. All right, I figured I would show you guys how I reskin these things these days when I recycle the original leather. And basically I have a sheet of double-sided adhesive here. This I think is, what, A5? A5 size? And yeah, I'm basically going to take the original tan leather panel that we salvaged and put it on the adhesive like so. Just like that, starting at one side, pushing it all the way up, and then very carefully with a sharp scalpel we can now go along the sides and just trim any residual sticker residue like so. Just taking your time. Pressing down. And yeah, basically one A5 piece here has enough adhesive to do 2 leather panels. There we go. And this is exactly how I stuck Ronnie's leather on before. And yeah, certainly the easiest slash best way that I've found of preserving the leather. What I like to then do is just roll the panel the other way, the opposite direction, just to make sure it's going to go on nicely. And I'm going to give the bottom of the camera just one quick little spritz of alcohol just to make sure everything's clean. Off camera, I took all the adhesive off. Much easier to do that while the panel's completely off the camera. And I tested the film ejection on it as well. Even though all of my test battery packs are running pretty low in voltage, I actually need to go and buy some fresh 600 film, just because I've been using these test packs so much that they're starting to run low. But the film ejection does work. Alright, now I just have to, yep, so it goes on like so. You can kind of tell where the original adhesive, it leaves the same patterns as the dots at the bottom of the camera. And yeah, basically it's just a matter of lining it up and dropping it down. Just, whoops, that's my head. Doing so very, very gently. There we go. Good as new. And yeah, that really is a great way of salvaging the original panel, which despite having been removed from the camera twice now, is in pretty damn good condition. So just to show you guys that it works, as I said, film ejection is usually a little bit faster, but this pack of film is quite old, but it does work. Ta-da! And the camera is now working like a charm. So there you go, Ronnie. I hope you're happy about that. In the future, if you wanted further upgrades to this camera, I could of course replace the PCB with an SX-70R PCB that gives you Bluetooth control and stuff. And I could add the Polaroid battery mod for lithium-ion power so that you didn't have to rely on the internal built-in batteries. But yeah, I will basically get your payment details, just pay for the parts of the motor. Consider this pretty much a warranty repair. And yeah, I'll get this shipped off to you. I hope you guys liked this slightly quicker video. I'm not doing massive long form content at the moment, and if I do drop a video that is longer form, it's probably one that I recorded a few weeks ago because I'm very busy at the moment. But yeah, I hope all of you out there watching have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time.